I love you guys too. Hi, I am a faithful and grateful believer of Jesus Christ. I struggle successfully with an addiction to pain pills, heroin, and methamphetamines. I've been sober for 2 years and 8 months. I currently struggle with self-doubt, self-worth, which amounts to not feeling good enough, and my name is Kerri. I've tried to write my story from beginning to end, but I have found that the beginning lies in the middle and there is no end. Trials of this world will never end, not until the day I die. But let me tell you now, death is yet to come. Yes. And the victory of Jesus Christ is the only reason that I stand before you today. Amen. Let me begin where I can remember. My parents divorced when I was 5. The divorce was bitter. Both of my parents became broken people, more broken than before. My mom eventually moved here to her hometown, Cortez, Colorado, while my father and new stepmother retained parental custody of me, my sister, and my stepsister 8 hours away in Evanston, Wyoming. I was deeply affected by my mother's absence and my father's love. I don't think I ever adjusted to life as a child. I just made it through every day, wondering why my mom was gone, wondering why everybody was gone, wondering why I was invisible. When I was 12, I would force myself to pass out before bed. In those dreams that came, after holding my breath, with my arms pressed to my chest, I was released from my emotional prison. Soon after forcing myself to pass out came alcohol. Not like ages 9, 10, and 11, but drunkenness. Next came Ritalin. I was trying to be me, but I was so far from me in every moment. At age 13, my mother gained custody of me and my sister. We left all we knew in Evanston, Wyoming, and moved to Cortez, Colorado. Life was okay until I turned 14. I began using marijuana, alcohol, Xanax, acid, anything. I lost my virginity through rape while high on marijuana, intoxicated on alcohol, fading in and out of consciousness due to Xanax. I was depressed and became suicidal. I ran away from home, stealing my grandparents' car and my sister's money. Around age 15, something within me changed. I wanted to live. I wanted a life. I came back to myself. I got sober. I stopped hurting myself and found self-love and self-worth. I excelled in school and decided to go to college. While in college, I found my calling. I wanted to be a social worker. At age 19, I was married. At age 21, I was pregnant with my firstborn baby girl and graduating college. I graduated with honors of summa cum laude with a GPA of 3.8 with a bachelor's degree in sociology and human services. 3 days after graduation, I began my career in child protective services. My life revolved around my job. I maintained my position as a social worker for the next 8 years. In that 8 years, I allowed so many circumstances to devastate my life. Professionally, I witnessed abuse that was beyond my ability to comprehend. Bruises, contusions, burns, a 7-month-old baby with 7 fractures, all in different stages of healing. But the worst of all was death. I had been the ongoing caseworker for 3 small children for almost 4 years. The youngest of the 3, the little girl, died due to head trauma inflicted by the foster mom. This child's death broke my belief in humanity, in God, and in myself. I was supposed to protect this child. Guilt raged within me, and I blamed myself for her death. In my personal life, I had my son only 22 months after my daughter was born. My marriage was a mess. I felt alone and exhausted with my 2 tiny children. I had worked so hard thinking that if I had a career, a husband, 2 children, and 2.5 dogs, my life would be perfect. But my perfectly attainable life was falling apart at the seams. I finally fell apart, but from this point it was a slow fade. I got a divorce, I quit my job, and moved to Denver. While in Denver, I engaged in another unhealthy relationship, and within 9 months I returned to Cortez, Colorado, where I was rehired at Child Protective Services. Once again, I got involved in another unhealthy relationship. I was attending a local church with this man. Since we lived together, the church pushed for marriage so we could actively participate in the church. After 2 months, we were married. After 2 more months, my daughter revealed he was sexually abusing her. I kicked him out that night. 90 days after that, we were divorced. There was a trial, but due to lack of evidence, he was found not guilty. I had failed again. This time, I was unable to protect my own child. Shame now added to my guilt. I started drinking and met another man who would eventually become my third ex-husband. We moved in together 3 months after my divorce from my second ex-husband. In the year that followed, he introduced me to pain pills. It started with one here and there, but I was eventually asked to resign from my position as a social worker. I decided to go back to college and get a second bachelor's degree, this time in psychology. I once again graduated with honors of cum laude and a 3.6 GPA. The thing was that I had to take opioids to get through graduation. I thought I was hiding my addiction. I thought I was a functioning addict. I coached my daughter's softball team for 6 years. I assisted coaching my son in baseball. I attended every dance practice. I showed up for every dance recital. I attended all the school functions. I made cupcakes for birthdays, took my kids to school every day, and made dinner every night. By October of 2014, my addiction to pain pills was so consuming, I flunked out of a prestigious college where I was going to get my master's degree in social work. My third ex-husband was supplying me with pain pills every month. My doctor's office was supplying me with pain pills every month. And once those ran out, I had my connections on the street. But one night, I was out of money, out of refills, and out of connections for more pills. For me, there was no end in sight, and I attempted suicide twice that day. I never told anyone I was trying to kill myself. Excuse me. My third ex-husband brought me home cocaine. He thought it would help me kick the addiction to the pills. Next came meth. It helped me stay awake. When I had taken so many opioids, I was falling out. Next came heroin. It was cheaper than pain pills and would stop the sickness from the withdrawals and make me normal again. In July 2015, I used heroin intravenously for the first time. I was dealing drugs, doing any drugs, and still trying to maintain the perception of being a perfect mom. But at this point, I was so far from the mom my children once knew. In November of 2015, I overdosed on heroin, meth, and fentanyl in front of my children. I lost my parental rights except for supervised visitation 3 days later. I didn't schedule a visit to see them. I didn't deserve them. I had failed yet again. Instead, I went on a mission to destroy myself. For the next 6 weeks, I overdosed on opioids an estimated 15 to 18 times. That meant I was on the brink of death every 2 to 3 days. I wasn't overdosing on purpose, but looking back now, there is a part of me that thinks that I was. I had nothing left to live for. I finally pushed myself over the edge and reached out for help when I intravenously used ketamine mixed with meth. I went to rehab to get off the opioids, but not the meth. I took that to rehab with me. I left rehab after 2 weeks. From February 2016 through February 2017, a number of things happened. I finally got sober off the opioids, but I couldn't put down the meth. I was placed on probation out of both Nevada and Colorado. I divorced my third ex-husband and married my fourth. I stopped seeing my kids altogether. I picked up more charges I wanted out of my life, but I didn't know how to stop. When my fourth husband went to jail for possession and distribution, I finally thought there might be a way out. David and I had been engaging in drug distribution together. He saw my mess. He offered me to go with him to Craig, Colorado, to get sober, work, and get our lives together. As friends, we left for Craig. Sobriety came as we engaged in a romantic relationship, but before long, I was back in jail, once again facing more charges. It was here in jail this time that I realized that jails and prisons weren't built by man. They were built by God, for God, to save people from me, or like me, from myself. I felt hopeless and alone, even though David was often in the cell across from me. With the most humble of heart, I prayed to God to never let me outside the walls of confinement until I would never touch drugs again. Well, that old saying applies here. Be careful what you ask God for. I was served with 2 no-bond warrants out of Cortez in Las Vegas. My probations had been revoked, and I was facing a maximum sentence of 36 years for my crimes. Prison was my only option. I quickly learned, when God is all you have, God is all you need. Amen. I put my faith in Him to work in my favor, and God came through. Let me explain the gravity of my situation. I had accumulated 25 felony charges. I was only handed down a 2-year prison sentence out of Colorado and a 1-year prison sentence from Nevada, and on my record currently are only 4 felony convictions. While in jail, I began to do Celebrate Recovery on my own. I wanted hope and healing, and the truth in those lessons rang true. I was praising Jesus for the victory over my life, but I was still haunted with the fact that I was going to prison. Who had I become? David was released from jail a few days before I was transported to prison. Now I truly felt alone. When I got to prison, I was suicidal. I wanted to die, but I never attempted because I already knew God would not let me succeed. So instead, I read my Bible and then lay down at night and beg God, make this my last breath. But every morning, I woke up. I hated myself. I hated me. But God loved me, yes. So I sought after Him.
Yes, amen.
In prison, I signed up for Lutheran services, a Christian service called God Behind Bars, a Joyce Meyer's Bible study, and lastly, Celebrate Recovery. I slowly began to seek out my pain, to find healing. I was forgiven and gave forgiveness. David had remained sober. He was building a life for us if I would still have him. He felt responsible for my mistakes. I tried running him off for months. He was too good of a man for me. I felt like a wreck who was unlovable and unable to give love. He refused to let me believe the lies I told myself and stuck by my side. After Christmas, in Lutheran services, we had a motto that came from a verse, "Bloom where you are planted." I lived with this motto, repeating it daily. In today's language, we may interpret this as to be fruitful, blossom, become all you were created to be, make the best of what you have and do what is right, even when it is hard. Our Lord God Almighty tells us in Jeremiah 17:7-8, that the expression, bloom where you are planted, is, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots to stream. It does not fear. I will not fear. When the heat comes, my leaves are always green. I will have no worries in a year of drought. I will bear fruit. I followed this. I followed God's commandments of love God with all my heart, love others as myself, and forgive, so I will be forgiven. I was granted parole in January 2018. On March 13th, I thought I was going home. Prison transport arrived, and instead I was extradited to Las Vegas, Nevada. At this point, you might be thinking I freaked out, and believe me, I wanted to. Instead, I cried. Then, as I stood in shackles, I looked up and told God, thank you. In the back of that transport van, I felt a peace unlike any peace I had ever felt. My will became God's will. I was worried about my mom, my kids, and David, but I heard God. Bloom where you're planted. I finally got to call out after 2 weeks. I had made it to prison in Nevada, and here my God work and journey continued. I continued to write my kids, all 4 of them, as well as send them presents. I made amends with my father, my sister, my children's father, and my mom. I met an amazing woman who remains a close friend of mine. She's still incarcerated, but I write her, talk to her on the phone, and send her pictures frequently. I was granted parole again, this time in Nevada, on September 21st of 2018. I was released to come home to Cortez, Colorado. Getting out of prison is not as glorious as it may seem. I felt unsteady, shaken. I was out and now had to walk the walk I had talked. I did not set out on a mission to prove myself, though. I had nothing to prove. God knew my heart. Although I did have to follow God's will, which is not easy. The first Sunday I was out, I came to church here at Rock Springs. The next Friday, I came to celebrate recovery. Celebrate Recovery was not easy for me to come to. I was physically shaking and in fear of total judgment. These people knew who I used to be, but worse than that, they knew my mother. But my first few weeks coming, an amazing crew of women made me feel wanted and welcome. Thank you, Mandy Kane, Debbie Franz, Kelly Oliver, and Tanya Pilcher. And one woman glowed, and I wanted what she had within me, Ms. Laura Franklin. Celebrate Recovery became my place of rest every week. I listened, I learned, I watched, and began to set in motion the determination God had placed within me. Yes. My life had to be different, but I didn't know how, so I let go of myself and let God lead the way. God tells us he will restore the years the locusts have eaten, Amen. Which means he will give back to us all that was lost if we will only follow him. Amen. I never believed this until I chose to trust him in my unbelief. Slowly but surely, my life came together. David, Damien, and Jackson were my cheerleaders from day one. They would wait in anticipation for my arrival. Like every time was my first time coming home. My own children had been deeply hurt, and the process of a homecoming had to be rebuilt through trust. I got to see Ashton first, playing basketball with him at the rec center. And in November of 2018, I finally got to see Cadence. I will never forget the sound of her sweet voice saying, "Hi, Mom." In December of 2018, I moved in with David, Damien, and Jackson, and was also granted unsupervised visitation with Cadence and Ashton. In January of 2019, I began working with David full-time doing tile and laminate. And just on a side note here, if you have any home repairs, remodeling, please be sure to give us a call. On February 21st, 2019, Ashton's birthday, I was released from parole from both states, and for the first time in 3 years, I was on my way to Phoenix, Arizona to watch my daughter perform at a dance competition. In March of 2019, on my birthday, my kids came to stay the night for the first time and were ready to come home. In May of 2019, we moved in as a family to a new home and decided that June 20th of 2020, we would become a family wedded under our Father God. In June of 2019, I completed the Celebrate Recovery 12-step study.
Yeah.
In August, I was honored to have got to attend the Celebrate Recovery Summit of Hope in California. Someone asked me what I learned from attending the Summit of Hope. I told them I learned that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's right. Yeah.
In October of 2019, I was asked to apply for a job at the Pinion Project. Well, I got that job.
All right.
And although it was hard to leave David, I now get to help felons, just like me, who are on parole, just as I once was, get their lives on track.
Amen.
I have been so blessed by my God. He has shown me mercy and bestowed upon me grace. I still have lots of work to do, but lots. Many relationships to build, grow, and repair. I don't want you to think that life is easy because you trust God or follow His will, because it's not.
That's right.
I still have fear. But God says 365 times in the Bible, one day for every time of the year, do not fear.
Yes.
Amen.
I know I have all I need, for my God knows my needs, and if I ask, I shall receive.
Yeah.
I know I will face more trials in my life, but my God has come before me.
Amen.
Yes.
I know I am free from my past because Jesus died for me. For the newcomer here tonight, or for another person sitting in this room who keeps wondering why you keep coming back, there is a way out of whatever you're struggling with.
Yes, sir.
Your life can be lifted up again, or maybe for the first time, if you seek out God and find faith in Jesus. Here, no one struggles alone. We all have fought different fights, but here you are accepted. Here you are equal. Here you are loved.
Amen.
Please come back.
Amen.
And for all my church family, my CR family here, I love you dearly, and thank you for loving me. Thank you for listening, and if you could please join us for one last song.